The landscape of prehistoric Europe was a fractured mosaic of rivers, mountains, and shifting climates. Yet among all these geographic features, few played as pivotal and mysterious a role in human history as the Rhône River Valley in what is now southern France. Flowing from the glaciers of the Swiss Alps through the narrow gorges and fertile plains of southeastern France, the Rhône carved not only a physical channel through Europe, but also, as emerging research suggests, a profound cultural and genetic boundary at a critical moment in human prehistory. At the twilight of the Middle Paleolithic, approximately 54,000 years ago, a small band of anatomically modern humans pushed into Europe earlier than previously believed. They left behind a fleeting archaeological fingerprint in the Rhône Valley, known today as the Néronien. But they did not find an empty continent. On the opposite bank of the river, perhaps mere kilometers away, lived the last great holdouts of the Neanderthal world. These were not the Neanderthals of Vindija or Chagyrskaya, whose genomes we now know well. The groups in southern France appear to have been different, older, more isolated, possibly genetically unique. These were the so-called Thorin Neanderthals, a name given to a hypothesized, deeply divergent Neanderthal lineage that has left no complete skeleton, yet whose genetic shadow may still haunt the genomes of modern humans. This video explores the Rhône River not merely as a waterway, but as a cultural divide, a hybrid frontier, and perhaps the forgotten battleground of one of the earliest and most consequential encounters between Homo sapiens and Neanderthal Europe. We will examine how the archaeological sequence at Grotta Mandrin reshapes our understanding of Homo sapiens migration, why the Néronian tool culture represents a flashpoint of innovation and contact, and how ghost Neanderthal DNA in modern humans may be the last echo of these lost southern Neanderthals. How can we imagine populations that live for 50 millennia in isolation while they are only 2 weeks' walk from each other? All processes need to be rethought. Dr. Ludovic Slimak, the discoverer of Thorin, told Live Science. According to Dr. Slimak, that sentence is meant to evoke something far more profound: the deep cultural and social boundaries that seem to have separated Neanderthal populations even in the absence of geographical obstacles. The rich technical traditions we associate with the Thorin region, termed the post-Néronian II, diverge strikingly from what we know in nearby regions like southern Burgundy, Dordogne, the Pyrenees, or even Languedoc, Roussillon, just a short distance away. More surprisingly still, my work on lithic sourcing revealed that these post-Néronian II populations never crossed the Rhône, a social boundary that seems extraordinary when we consider that the river was frozen 6 months of the year and that earlier Neanderthals had routinely crossed it. What we see here is not a matter of physical accessibility, but of cultural closure, isolation, and distinctiveness over tens of millennia. So when I say 2 weeks' walk, I'm really referring to the mystery of proximity without contact, a paradox that haunts our understanding of Neanderthal social landscapes, Slimak wrote. Geographically, the Rhône River was never an impassable barrier. Even in the late Pleistocene, it could have been forded or crossed by raft in its upper reaches, or followed downstream to its deltas. But culturally and behaviourally, it seems to have functioned as a powerful divider. On the eastern side of the Rhône, particularly at the now famous Grotta Mandrin in the Drôme region, archaeologists discovered a remarkably intact sequence of human occupation layers. Within this sequence lies a horizon dated to approximately 54,000 years ago. Recently, Ludovic Slimak and his team published a groundbreaking paper announcing the presence of a Homo sapiens tooth in this layer, directly associated with bladelet tools, an industry he labelled the Néronien. The implications were staggering. Modern humans were in France 10,000 years earlier than previously thought. But what makes the Mandrin site even more fascinating is what came before and after. Beneath the Néronian layer, older Mousterian tools typical of Neanderthal groups are found. Above the Néronian, those same Mousterian technologies return and persist for several millennia before the Proto-Aurignacian finally arrives in force. The stratigraphy tells a clear story. The Néronian modern humans were a brief intrusion, a cultural blip between waves of Neanderthal dominance. They came, they made tools, they vanished. So where did they go? And what happened while they were there? The Néronien industry at Mandarin is distinctive. It features a lithic repertoire centered on small blades, bladelets and micropoints, many under 3 centimeters in length. The craftsmanship is precise, standardized and microlithic, unlike anything seen in the preceding Mousterian layers. Slimak noted that the tools resemble the initial Upper Paleolithic industries of the Levant, especially those at Chagyrskaya. This resemblance matters. It suggests that the creators of the Néronien were not Neanderthals experimenting with new techniques, but modern humans carrying a cultural tradition with deep roots in the Eastern Mediterranean. The Néronien was not an evolution from local Mousterian industries, it was an intrusion. But this cultural tradition spread across the Rhône Valley and then disappeared. Why? One hypothesis is that the Néronien modern humans were simply too early. They entered a land still dominated by entrenched Neanderthal groups. Isolated from resupply, too few in number to establish permanent dominance, and perhaps facing hostile resistance, the Néronien population could not hold the territory. What remains is a fossil tooth and a few thousand tiny blades, the last traces of a failed outpost. Yet failure is a modern judgment. The brief Néronien presence may have accomplished something profound and enduring. It may have introduced Homo sapiens DNA into European Neanderthals, or vice versa. Unlike Vindija or Altai, southern France has yet to yield a high-quality Neanderthal genome. But that does not mean Neanderthals weren't there. In fact, they were everywhere. The Rhône Valley and adjacent Massif Central were densely inhabited by Neanderthal groups throughout the late Middle Paleolithic. Sites like Grotte de Néron, Abri du Maras, and Figuier offer rich Mousterian layers with no sign of modern humans until the Néronien. Yet, despite this cultural continuity, genetic continuity is harder to trace. The Neanderthals of southern France may have been regionally isolated, genetically divergent for tens of thousands of years. Their isolation could have created a ghost lineage, a genetically distinct population that never made it into our fossil genome collection but still interbred with early Homo sapiens. Such ghost lineages are not hypothetical. Multiple genomic studies have demonstrated that modern humans carry Neanderthal DNA segments that do not match any known Neanderthal genome. These segments are deeply divergent, sometimes by over 100,000 years. Their source? Unknown, but likely to be a Neanderthal population unrepresented in the current fossil genome record. The Thorin Neanderthals, as they've been informally labelled by some researchers and commentators, may be the source of these ghost genes. Living in the rugged gorges and oak-covered plateaus of southern France, these Neanderthals were culturally conservative, using Mousterian flake tools, while modern humans in the Levant were already making bladelets. But their isolation gave them a unique genetic signature. And when modern humans arrived in the Rhône corridor via Italy or the Mediterranean, they may have mated, however briefly, with these archaic holdouts. The Rhône then becomes the point of contact between two lineages, one old, one new, one indigenous, one intrusive, one doomed to disappear, the other fated to spread. But not before something was exchanged, genes, tools, or both. What's so fascinating about ghost DNA is that it has no face, no fossil, no name. It exists only as a negative space, a shadow traced through recombination patterns in living human genomes. But it is real, and it seems to come from places and people we've yet to discover, or more likely, have already lost. The Rhône Valley is one of the few places in Europe where the archaeological record shows such a clear sequence again. It is a rare site where cultural superimposition is not linear. The moderns don't stay. They don't dominate. They don't even seem to change the Neanderthals. But they were there. This makes the Rhône corridor a plausible candidate for one of the earliest episodes of hybridization in Europe between Homo sapiens and a genetically distinct Neanderthal population. The offspring of such unions may not have thrived. They may have been few, but their DNA, passed on through surviving sapiens or Neanderthal populations, could have spread silently across Europe. Later Homo sapiens, like those found at Bachokiro or Zlati Kun, may have inherited these unusual Neanderthal segments. That inheritance may trace not to Vindija or Chagyrskaya, but to a cold cave above a fast-moving river in France. Of course, the exchange of genes does not require love. The first contact between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals in the Rhône corridor could have been peaceful, but it could also have been violent. The Rhône may have been a contested border, a no-man's land between advancing moderns and defending Neanderthals. Slimak has suggested that the Néronien may have been restricted in movement, their access to Neanderthal territory denied. The disappearance of the Neronien industry and the re-emergence of Mousterian traditions suggest either retreat or extermination. Either way, the modern humans did not hold the Rhône. But even in defeat, they may have left their mark, in bones, in babies, in genetic anomalies passed down through time. The Rhône, like the Danube or the Euphrates, may have been one of the first frontiers of species interaction, a place where the old world collided with the new. The Rhône River today flows through vineyard valleys and medieval towns, but 54,000 years ago, its banks may have witnessed one of the most pivotal moments in human history, the first entry of Homo sapiens into Neanderthal Europe. It did not end with conquest. It did not even end with survival. But it began something. In a narrow cave above the river, a child lost a tooth. That tooth, found 54,000 years later, tells a story of presence, of innovation, and of disappearance. Around it, microliths, tools of modern humans, lie in sediment once walked by Neanderthals. And perhaps in the blood of their children, something new began. We may never find the bones of the Thorin Neanderthals. We may never name their clans, see their faces, or know their myths. But their legacy may flow through us still, in the hidden alleys of our genomes, in the ghost DNA that cannot be placed. And the Rhône remembers. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe and comment before you go.